Alright, I've been cycling through the EGR vacuum system on this car. So I connected a vacuum pump to the EGR valve. We'll go ahead and do that now, just to show you on camera what's going on here. Right. So our EGR valve is toast. It's not holding any vacuum. That's pretty typical, really, for any old EGR valve on an early emissions car, whether it be gas or diesel or what have you. So this EGR valve is dead. Another thing to note, the vacuum supplied by the EGR will not come on unless the engine is up to operating temperature. In order to determine operating temperature, they feed the vacuum through a thermal vacuum switch, which is connected right here to the thermostat housing. So if we want to test this switch, we're going to pull the vacuum off of the vacuum manifold on top of the valve cover. All right, we got our vacuum pump connected to that line coming from the vacuum manifold. And you can see we got leak down through the thermal vacuum switch. Plus, so that means this switch is bad. The EGR valve is bad. Another thing that is bad, there is a vacuum switch underneath this cover. So if you take this cover off right here, you will see a vacuum valve which is actuated by moving the accelerator. So vacuum flowing to the EGR will not be triggered unless you give the vehicle some throttle. Alright, we're going to show you what that looks like. Okay, we're going to pull the cover off. So we have a little vacuum switch in here when you put your foot on the throttle. You'll note you have a couple of switches. You have one on the top and one down below right here. So when you move the throttle, you'll note that the bottom one will activate that vacuum switch. Right? It's moving, but the top one is not. The top one, this top switch, is connected to this vacuum line, which goes right here. The top one, and this top port goes to this vacuum line, which goes to the thermal vacuum switch, which goes to the EGR. So basically the entire EGR system on this car is non-functional. Every single solitary system associated with it is broken. The throttle controlled vacuum switch is broken. The thermally controlled vacuum switch is broken. The EGR valve is broken. Well, at least we know what's wrong. All right, let's go ahead and review the EGR vacuum system on our 300SD. The diagram here says this is starting in model year 1981, and it is applicable to the 84 model year as well. You can see here that the vacuum pump sends the main vacuum feed over to the brake booster area where this number 62 is. It just says orifice, but this is the general vicinity of the brake booster. So that line will come into this sort of triangularly shaped doohickey right here, an orifice it's probably called, and will feed directly over to the connector on the top of the valve cover, which feeds the EGR. So this is the feed going to the EGR, and you press the throttle, the switch opens and allows vacuum to come down this line to this thermally activated switch, I guess you'd call it. And that will allow, once the engine is up to operating temperature, vacuum will be allowed to flow here to the EGR valve, which is labeled as number 60 here on the diagram. The other line, which is coming off of the top of the valve cover here, is going down to the VCV. So this is 65, which is the vacuum control valve. Now, as you vary the throttle, certain amounts of vacuum need to go to the vacuum modulator on the transmission. And this VCV sort of makes up for the fact that a diesel engine doesn't have a vacuum or doesn't generate a vacuum like a gasoline engine does. So this line comes in here and feeds the VCV, and as you give it a throttle, the throttle cable is actually connected to this thing, and as you give it throttle, it will vent vacuum off of this line going to the transmission, which is labeled as B right here. So we go down to B, it says automatic transmission. So this line coming off of here goes to your vacuum modulator on the side of your transmission. And as you give it more throttle, more vacuum is vented off to regulate the amount of vacuum that goes to the transmission. Now, where does it vent to? Well, it vents through this line here, which is labeled as A. It says vent to passenger compartment. So as vacuum is vented off, it will go through here and it will go into the passenger compartment. Where it goes from there, I really couldn't tell you. But on my car, basically this connector, this funny looking connector here is gone, and I have just replaced it with a T, basically. The feed will come into the T, and one half of it will go to the VCV. It'll go straight into the VCV, and the other half will go off to the transmission. And this feed into the passenger compartment here for A. This is unmodified on my car. That remains normal. And this line here coming from this switch on the top of the valve cover is eliminated, and of course all of this stuff going to the EGR is eliminated as well. So, all right, up next we're going to go out to the shop and take a look at my car to see what it looks like. Well, we're going to take time out here and just say thank you to one of my viewers, and a big shout out goes to Chris in Massachusetts for being such a fantastic sport and doing something I just didn't expect. If you guys have watched the video on rebuilding the Walker floor jack, you might recognize it or you might not. You might recognize this as the tool that I cobbled together to rebuild the jack. A nice fellow up in Massachusetts asked me, said, "Hey man, I'm rebuilding a jack and I'd really appreciate it if you would could you loan that to me for a little while so I can get my jack rebuilt?" You know, to be honest with you, I was a little bit hesitant. I was like, well, that's kind of unusual. But I said, you know what? What the heck? We'll send it off to the guy, and if it helps him out, great. Well, I sent it off. He used it to rebuild his jack, and he sent it back to me like he said he would. And let me show you what he sent. First off, he sent me a gift card to O'Reilly's. How cool is that? That is just fantastic. That is so nice. Thank you so much, Chris, for that. That will be used almost immediately, I guarantee it. The next thing he did was that he cleaned up all of my horrible welding. And believe you me, it was horrible, because I just cobbled this thing together in literally 20 minutes, right? He cleaned up all my welds, he ground down everything, made it look presentable. But let me show you what else he did. He embossed it. It says Walker Jack Tool. He put my name on it. It says Mike Harris, Impala Man. That is just the coolest thing ever. That is one of the nicest things anybody has ever done for me. I tell you what, that is just so fantastic. Well, Chris, here's to you, buddy. I'm glad you got your jack rebuilt, and I hope it serves you well for many years to come. All right, folks, that is just fantastic. I'm blown away by that. All right, folks, back to the action. All right, let's take a look at my car. So you can see the vacuum pump comes through this main line here, over here to this sort of cobbled together group of hoses. Now, I had some of these T and Y looking connectors on my car basically just broke. They were just old and all cracked up, and this part here with all these connectors branching off of it, it's hard to find. You don't want to crack this, trust me, okay? So what I did was I just cobbled together some new T's and Y's and so on and so forth, and copied what was already there. It looks a little spaghetti-ish, but it's fine, it works, it flows good vacuum. So this is just a place where it all comes together from the main vacuum pump. Now, where does it go from there? So you're looking at this line right here, and I'm going to wiggle it, right? That's the one that goes into the engine bay. And if you compare the diagram to my car, you'll see that it basically is the same thing, but I have just removed the EGR circuit. So this vacuum source goes into the VCV, and the VCV vents vacuum. This side of the T goes down there to the transmission, to the vacuum modulator. As you press your accelerator, you pull it, it moves that arm down there. Right there, it's connected to the VCV. You can see that arm right there, right? And it regulates the vacuum in the VCV, and it will vent vacuum off through this hose right here, and it goes through the firewall into the passenger compartment. This little brown and black vacuum line goes right down there below the VCV, and I can't for the life of me remember exactly what that is analogous to on the diagram, but it'll be okay. I know that on a lot of cars you're going to see like these little triangle shaped vacuum connectors, and all of those things were there to get vacuum over to the EGR system, which on my car has been completely removed. Now here is the switch, or what's left of the switch, this plastic doohickey. I left it in place because it's got a shaft and all this stuff here. All this stuff is connected to it. I decided to just leave it there, and it works fine. And as you can see, there is nothing going over to the EGR, which is completely gone. So there you go. That is the setup on my car. It's really, really simple. So you got this vacuum line coming off of the brake booster area. Goes over here, goes to a T. That T goes into the vacuum, into the VCV, and the other part goes to the transmission, and the vent from the VCV goes into the car, just like it's supposed to. There you have it, folks. All right, that's it for our little vlog on vacuum routing when you don't have an EGR valve. All right, folks, that's it for now. Appreciate you stopping by the channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to be notified whenever I release a new video, don't forget to click that little bell down below. You guys have a good one, and remember to enjoy driving your classic Mercedes.